Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
First this morning, breaking news, a ballot of 40,000 junior doctors has voted decisively to go on strike for 3 days in December. Under the plan, junior doctors will provide emergency care only for 24 hours on December the 1st, followed by a full walkout from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on December the 8th and December the 16th. The strike has been called in response to a new contract that the government wants to impose on medics. Here's Joko with the details.
It looks like it could be a tricky winter for Jeremy Hunt. The new contract is part of the government's plan to introduce a 7-day NHS, arguing the current arrangements are outdated. Currently, a junior doctor's normal hours are considered to be from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening, Monday to Friday. Mr Hunt wants to change that to 7 in the morning to 10 in the evening, Monday to Friday, and 7 until 7 on Saturdays. In order to sweeten the pill, doctors are being offered an 11% pay rise, as well as curbs in overtime. And Jeremy Hunt claims only 1% of doctors would lose out. However, the BMA argues doctors will be forced to work more antisocial hours, which would affect patient safety, and they fear the new contract could lead to a pay cut in the long term. Andrew.
Thanks, Joko. So this news just broke earlier this morning. We got the word that the ballot had been taken, 40,000 doctors. We understand there was a big turnout and about 98% of them voted to go on strike. Joan Bakewell, let me come to you first. Are you surprised by the scale of this vote for strike action?
No, it's a sensational vote, isn't it? 98%. I mean, you can't even legislating against the unions can't hit that. 98%.
Yes,
so
any ballot considerations, I think, would be covered on that one.
That's absolutely unanimous, and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. This is work in progress, isn't it? This is a contract that hasn't come to a proper solution. They want to go to ACAS, they'll probably go to ACAS, but the Minister must stay engaged with this and continue to negotiate.
Well, this will certainly concentrate his mind. We're going to stick with this story because we're joined now by the Chair of the Health Select Committee, a GP, Conservative MP, Dr Sarah Wollaston, and a junior doctor, Anna Warrington. I think you've just been on a long shift, is that right?
I've just been on 14 long shifts.
14. What have they consisted of?
Well, they've involved out-of-hours emergency care, so looking after sick people who need doctors in the nights and on weekends.
So 14 days in a row?
Yeah, a combination of nights and days for 14 days in a row.
And I understand you're not going to now get the weekend off?
Oh, I am actually.
You are?
First weekend in 3.
Oh, you are? So when will you be back on?
Following Monday.
You voted for strike action, yes?
I did, that's right.
Have you done so expecting you will go on strike or to concentrate the government's mind to think again?
I've voted for strike action, hoping that strike action will not need to be taken. But it is a last resort in a debate with Jeremy Hunt, who simply has not engaged with junior doctors about our very valid concerns about this frankly unsafe and unfair junior doctors contract.
This is the new changes he wants to make. Sarah Wollaston, putting aside the issues just for this question, you have to have made a complete Horlicks of something to get 98% of junior doctors who voted to vote for strike action. I don't remember when they last went on strike, if ever.
Well, remember, of course, I don't speak for the government.
I understand
so I
that.
Been part of the
no, that's why I'm asking you to comment.
But what I would
have
say,
they made a complete mess of it?
I think there has been serious misrepresentation on both sides of this dispute. So, for example, we still see in your programme, at the head of the programme, quoting that this was going to apply up to 10 p.m. on a Saturday. You know, it's not. So I think some concessions have been made, and equally the point
Saturdays are no longer
7 till 7.
Okay,
so it's up till 7 on a Saturday. Saturday no longer becomes a weekend in terms of pay.
Weekend day, isn't it?
Saturday becomes a normal working day.
Okay,
correct?
But the point I would make is that as Anna referred to at the beginning, what we don't want to see is junior doctors working very long hours over extended periods. Yeah. So there are parts of this negotiation which are about reducing the number of maximum hours.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to come on to the substance in a minute.
Yes.
That wasn't my question. My question was, that somebody somewhere in government, perhaps the Secretary of State for Health, has badly mishandled this to get a ballot in which 98% of people who I can never remember striking before voting to go on strike.
Absolutely, and I think the point I would make is there's been a breakdown of trust, so that what both sides are saying, we need to have some process that restores trust in what's being said.
So what would you advise the government to do?
Well, first of all, I would say that we need to try and avoid a strike. A strike will be damaging for patients, so I think that they should take every opportunity to get back around the table. Now, the Secretary of State was being asked if he would drop preconditions, which he's done. I very publicly asked him about that in the Commons. And now the BMA have come back to say they'd like to go through ACAS because they haven't had any confidence in the process that was delivered already by an independent pay review board.
Would that be a good thing?
And I think that rather than have a strike, I think that they should seriously consider that. So I hope they'll take.
All right, let me
that.
ask Anna Warrington. Are you up for the ACAS route, which is the conciliatory and advisory service in industrial disputes?
Throughout this entire debate, the BMA have repeatedly asked Jeremy Hunt to engage in fair, level playing field negotiations with them about this contract. He has consistently refused to remove the threat of imposition of this contract. He essentially says if we don't agree with him, he might just impose it anyway. And indeed, in summer, that's what he did. This is not a man who's willing to engage in negotiations, which is why at this stage I think bringing in a third-party outside body would be advisable, simply because we have lost faith in him. I do not trust that health minister. He does not understand what it is to be a junior doctor. He does not understand what is in the interest of the NHS. He has called me militant. He has called me lacking in vocation.
But you personally?
He's described junior doctors who've taken action as militant.
Right.
He's described junior doctors as lacking vocation. The photograph behind you is of a strike of 20,000 junior doctors in London, which I organised. So I could describe myself if you like.
Maybe he was thinking of you then. What do you say to that they've lost faith in the Secretary of State?
There's a huge strength of feeling here, and what we do need to do is involve somebody that both sides can have confidence in to handle this dispute. Because really, if we end up with a strike, as you say, this would be unprecedented. We're not just talking about removal of emergency cover, we're talking about a full walkout on 2 of those days.
I understand that.
Very serious.
And we also understand the government's desire to improve healthcare over the weekends. But is it really possible to do that, to create what they call a 7-day-a-week health service, which is seamless, without any more money?
Well, indeed, that is the big challenge here, isn't it? And I think
but that's what they're trying to do, isn't it?
It's going to have to be a compromise, indeed.
There has to be a compromise, and I imagine that the compromise will be that doctors will work longer hours for less pay.
But the compromise...
Well, that wouldn't be a compromise for you. That would be defeat for you, wouldn't it?
That would be defeat for us. But how else do you extend a 5-day pay envelope to provide a 7-day service?
You accept, I assume, that there have to be... we could improve the current situation.
Of course. Look, the NHS is not perfect. It's always evolving. One thing that has frustrated me repeatedly is Jeremy Hunt's tendency to refer to the NHS as not a 7-day NHS. As by my example, the NHS always provides a 7-day service, 24/7, 7 days a week, weekends and evenings. There is always an emergency service in situ.
Yes. Let's just respond to that point.
About the point is that I don't think it's about extending, making working weeks longer. In fact, explicitly, it talks about reducing it to 72 hours. It means perhaps having more of those shifts staggered at certain times so that we have a more even distribution throughout the week. And I think that the key point here is I understand why junior doctors don't trust the mechanism currently proposed to enforce that reduction in hours. But my point would be, rather than go on strike, the right way now is to get around the table and make sure that you've got the teeth in that process. Because let's face it, imposing fines is a very wasteful way of using a pay envelope. It would be better to be able to use that that's currently going in fines to actually provide more pay for juniors. But alongside that, have a very robust mechanism that means that managers can't slip. Because, of course, I was that junior doctor generation that did work long hours.
Well, that all sounds very plausible, but I don't think it has any kind of real value or truth behind it. Discussing redistributing doctors over the week. Well, why would we want to distribute routine services, which currently Monday to Friday, on the weekend? We already know from pilot studies of GPs' practices opening on the weekend that people don't want to see a doctor routinely on the weekend. They only want to see a doctor for an emergency, which we already have. And let's look at the bigger picture here. We are in times of austerity. The NHS is being squeezed radically.
Anna, we're
so
in agreement here.
why
Maybe
extend
you should do the
routine
ACAS
services?
job.
Anna, we are in agreement.
Why doesn't the government involve
Let me
you?
finish,
Indeed,
please.
well, I've
routine
offered.
services to the weekend.
well,
We
hold
don't
on,
want
have
them.
you?
Hang on.
No,
Yes,
no,
I have offered because I mean.
Well, what
I
have
guess,
you offered the government?
Well, what I've said is I'd love to be in a position where I can actually try and look at the differences between the two sides and say, you know, where can we find compromise? Because I absolutely agree with Anna, and I've spoken about this in the Commons, that when money is tight, it's much more challenging to be looking at a routine 7-day service. And as Anna has said, in the pilots where this has been done in general practice, it hasn't actually been taken up.
Is it not the case, though,
Yes.
that some of the figures that the government used to show that the service in the hospitals over the weekend was not as good as the rest of the week, that there were actually more fatalities as a result, on examination turned out to be less than robust?
Well, indeed, and I've spoken about this in the Commons as well. You have to look behind this. These are what you call statistical excess deaths, and at no point in the study did it say this was entirely due to medical staff. We need to look at
So
the
the
bigger
service is
picture.
not as bad at the weekends as the government has claimed.
to look behind
Mr. Hunt,
it.
looking behind it, one sees a spin strategy that is designed to achieve a particular goal with regards to the NHS that is not in the interests of patients.
What was the
nor
particular
interests of
goal?
the doctors. Well, it's something to do with extending routine services to the weekend. The NHS can't afford to do that. My suspicion is that in the long term, we're looking to privatise the NHS. Mr. Hunt himself has written a book in support of that idea, and I do foresee that will be a result. There will be a mass exodus.
Final quick word.
No, I think you should conflate the two issues here. What we must do is focus on making sure that we reduce avoidable mortality, and there are many more factors to that than just medical staffing. It looks at availability of scans. It looks at the patient mix that you have at weekends. Much that we can do. Let's focus on avoiding a strike.
Let's give that investment rather than cuts.
We will have to leave it there. 2 doctors for the price of 1. Thank you very much. We should say that we did ask a government minister to come on and explain the government's position and respond to the ballot this morning, but not for the first time. No minister was available. I now say that phrase in my sleep these days.
It may end soon, you never know.
I doubt it.